One rainy afternoon, a billionaire walked into a small-town diner with his disabled son. He expected a meal, but found a waitress whose kindness would change all their lives forever. Emily had always lived a quiet life. She never had much, but she had enough. Every morning she woke up early, tied her worn-out sneakers, and walked 2 miles to the small family diner where she worked as a waitress. The job wasn't easy. Pay was low, the shifts were long, and some customers were rude, but Emily didn't complain. She had a gentle spirit and a kind heart that made her stand out. Even in the busiest rush hours, the people in her town knew her by name. Kids loved her because she would draw little smiley faces with ketchup on their plates or fold napkins into tiny animals. Elderly customers liked how she always remembered their orders and asked about their grandchildren. She treated everyone like they mattered, no matter how they looked, dressed, or behaved. She believed that everyone was fighting a battle they didn't talk about. On that kindness could make a difference. Her home life wasn't easy either. Emily lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment with her sick mother and younger brother, Caleb. Her mother had suffered a stroke 2 years ago, and since then, Emily had taken on the role of caretaker. Caleb was still in school, and Emily was determined to make sure he didn't have to give up his dreams because of money problems. Every extra tip she made went into a small jar labeled Caleb's college. She worked 6 days a week and sometimes pulled double shifts at the diner and a local gas station. Was tired almost all the time, but she kept going. She had no choice. One rainy afternoon, the bell above the diner's door rang, and a tall man stepped in, pushing a wheelchair. The man was dressed neatly in a dark coat, his hair slightly damp from the rain. He had a serious face, quiet eyes, and a tired expression. Sitting in the wheelchair was a small boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old. The boy had thin arms, his head leaned slightly to one side, and his eyes didn't move much. Emily noticed right away that the boy was disabled. She didn't stare, didn't whisper, she didn't freeze. Instead, she walked up to them with a smile and said gently, "Would you two like a booth or a table?" The man looked up, surprised. Most people stared at his son, or spoke only to him, as if the boy didn't exist. But this young waitress had addressed both of them. He blinked and answered, "A booth, please." Emily quickly cleaned the corner booth near the window and guided them there. She knelt down next to the boy and said softly, "Hi there. I'm Emily. What's your name, sweetheart?" The boy didn't answer. His mouth hung slightly open, and his eyes stared forward blankly. "He's nonverbal," the man explained, watching her closely. "That's okay," Emily said, still smiling. "I talk enough for 2 people anyway." The man looked at her again, this time with something like curiosity. Most people got awkward or uncomfortable around his son. They avoided eye contact. They spoke in whispers. But this waitress, this young woman in a worn apron, seemed completely calm, natural. Kind Emily brought them menus and some warm tea. As they looked through the options, she noticed the boy beginning to shake slightly. His hands trembled and his eyes fluttered. Without asking, Emily crouched beside him and gently placed her hand on his. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice soft as a lullaby. "You're safe. It's just the rain outside. Nothing to worry about." The boy didn't respond, but he stopped shaking. His fingers, though stiff, slowly curled around hers. The man was stunned. His son Liam never reacted to strangers like this. In fact, he often cried or panicked when people came close. But this woman had walked straight into his space, spoken gently, and somehow his son felt safe. The man stared at the scene, unsure of what he was feeling. Grateful, shocked, hopeful. He didn't say much during the meal. Emily came and went, serving food, cracking small jokes, bringing Liam a coloring book and a cup with a lid and straw. She never once treated him like a burden. She asked his father if certain foods were okay for him. She talked to Liam even when he didn't answer. She even tried humming a soft tune when the boy seemed agitated. Jonathan Blake, the man in the booth, was used to being judged. In his world, he was a billionaire, a tech genius, a powerful man with the ability to buy companies, build software that shaped the world, and speak on stages around the globe. But none of that mattered when it came to Liam. His wife had died. During childbirth, and he'd been raising Liam alone ever since, no amount of money could change the fact that his son was severely disabled, unable to speak, walk, or respond the way other children did. He had hired the best doctors, the finest therapists, state-of-the-art technology. Nothing worked. Liam remained locked in his silent world, and Jonathan had come to accept that this was how it would always be. But here, in a tiny old diner in a quiet town, something unexpected had happened. A stranger had made his son feel peace. When the meal ended, Jonathan paid the bill in cash and left a generous tip. Emily didn't count it until later. When she saw how much it was, she was shocked, but assumed it was a mistake. She tried to catch him as he walked toward a sleek black car, but he waved her off politely. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For everything." Over the next few weeks, Jonathan returned, always with Liam, always during Emily's shift. Sometimes they just had tea, sometimes a light meal, and each time Liam grew more relaxed. He smiled occasionally, blinked in response to Emily's voice, even let out small noises that sounded almost like laughter. When she told silly stories, the other waitresses noticed. They whispered about the mystery man who came in with a disabled child and left huge tips. Some guessed he was a lawyer, others thought he was in hiding. Emily didn't care. She was more interested in the boy. She read up on cerebral palsy at night. She downloaded children's songs with soft melodies and brought in small toys from the thrift store. Every time they came, she made a new effort to connect with Liam. She never asked the father personal questions. She never pried. She just did. What she always did offered kindness without expecting anything in return. Jonathan watched all this in silence. He had seen people be nice before, especially when they found out who he was. But Emily didn't know. She had no idea he was rich. No idea that the suit he wore cost more than her monthly rent. She treated him the same as everyone else. One afternoon, Liam was having a particularly bad day. He wouldn't stop moaning, and his arms jerked uncontrollably. Jonathan looked tense, trying to calm him, but failing. Emily approached slowly, crouched next to the boy, and began singing an old lullaby in a low voice. She placed a hand on his chest, letting him feel the rhythm of her touch. To Jonathan's surprise, Liam slowly quieted. His breathing evened out. His arms stilled. And then something miraculous happened. He reached out and touched Emily's hair. Jonathan felt something break inside him. His eyes filled with tears. For years, he had waited for moments like this. Real connection. Real response. And this waitress had given him that. Not a doctor. Not a machine. Just a young woman with a big heart. That night, Jonathan sat in his office staring at his laptop but unable to work. His mind kept replaying the image of Emily kneeling by Liam, her smile gentle, her voice full of warmth. He had built an empire. But he couldn't give his son what she did. Comfort, love, peace. He decided he needed to know more about her. He made a few discreet calls. Found out she lived in a modest apartment. Learned about her mother's condition. Discovered that she worked 2 jobs. No savings, no luxury. Just grit, heart, and duty. And yet, she carried herself with dignity. Jonathan realized something then. The richest person in that diner wasn't him. It was Emily, rich in spirit, rich in empathy, rich in something money couldn't buy. He made a decision that night. One that would not only change Emily's life, but also change his and Liam's forever. But for now, he kept coming back to the diner, just like before, quietly watching the way this waitress lit up his son's world, one small act of kindness at a time. Jonathan kept coming back to the small diner, sometimes twice a week. Every time he brought Liam, the boy was still quiet, still trapped in his own world, but something had changed. He wasn't as stiff as before. His eyes moved more, his hands twitched with purpose instead of panic. And whenever Emily walked over to their table, Liam's mouth would form the smallest smile barely there. But real Jonathan noticed every small improvement. Most people wouldn't have seen it. But as Liam's father, he had spent years hoping for any sign that his son was aware of the world around him. Now, For the first time, Liam was reacting. And it wasn't because of some expensive machine or highly paid therapist. It was because of Emily. Jonathan still didn't tell her who he really was. In the diner, he was just a quiet customer with a disabled child. Emily treated him like anyone else, maybe even more kindly. She joked with him sometimes, asked how Liam was doing, and brought their favorite drinks before they even ordered. She never tried to impress him. She didn't flirt. She was just ... real. And that was what touched him the most. One afternoon, the diner was nearly empty. Rain tapped against the windows. Jonathan and Liam were at their usual booth, and Emily was on break. She sat across from them for a few minutes, sipping tea and watching the rain. You know, she said softly, your son has the most beautiful eyes. I don't think people notice them, but I do. Jonathan looked at her, surprised. Most people don't say things like that. Emily smiled, brushing her hair back. Most people don't see him. They just see the wheelchair, the condition. But he's more than that. I can feel it. Jonathan nodded. You're right. Then, for the first time, he opened up a little. His name's Liam. He's 7. He has severe cerebral palsy. Nonverbal, limited mobility, and lots of sensory issues. Emily looked at Liam. That's a heavy list for a little guy. It is, Jonathan said. I've tried everything. Therapies, equipment, private clinics, but nothing ever really worked. Emily glanced at him. You must love him a lot to fight that hard. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. I do. He's all I have. Emily smiled again, her eyes gentle. He's lucky then. Wow. They sat in silence for a moment, just watching the boy. Liam was humming softly, rocking his head back and forth. It wasn't a sad sound. It was more like he was comforted. Later that evening, when Jonathan returned home, he sat in his large, modern house, feeling strangely empty. The place had all the latest designs, beautiful furniture, and a view of the city's skyline, but it lacked warmth. Liam had his own therapy room, top-level nurses, and every kind of equipment money could buy. But none of it made him as peaceful as he was during an hour at the diner with Emily. The more Jonathan thought about it, the more curious he became. Who was Emily really? He made a few discreet calls. It wasn't hard for someone with his resources. Soon he knew where she lived, how much she earned, and even that she worked a second job at a gas station 3 nights a week. He found out she dropped out of college to take care of her mother after her stroke. Her brother Caleb was 17, a top student, and Emily was trying to save money for his college, though she barely had enough for rent. All this information made Jonathan sit back in his chair and sigh deeply. Emily had every reason to be bitter, tired, or cold. But she was none of those things. She was patient, loving, and joyful even, while carrying so much on her shoulders. He remembered how she talked to Liam, how she never flinched when he twitched or cried, how she whispered calming words when no one else knew what to say. She had something rare, something that couldn't be taught in school or trained with money. She had natural compassion. And somehow, that compassion reached Liam like nothing else had. The next time they visited the diner, Emily greeted them with her usual warmth. Hey there, buddy, she said to Liam, crouching beside him. I missed you. Did you bring me one of your smiles today? Liam's mouth moved a little. A soft sound escaped. Jonathan almost laughed out loud. He looked at Emily. You know, think he actually did. Emily winked. Told you. As days passed, their visits became longer. Jonathan began to open up more. He told Emily stories about Liam's early years, about how helpless he had felt when doctors told him the diagnosis, how he had blamed himself, how he'd tried to fix everything with money. You'd think a man like me would have all the answers, he said one day. Emily looked at him, puzzled. What do you mean, a man like you? Jonathan smiled to himself. She still didn't know. I mean, someone with resources, he replied. She nodded. Yeah, but love doesn't come from money. Peace doesn't either. What Liam needs is simple. Love, patience, someone to see him. And you see him, Jonathan said quietly. Emily's eyes softened. Of course I do. Something inside Jonathan shifted. For years, He had been trying to solve his son like a math problem. Emily treated Liam like a person, not a puzzle, and that made all the difference. Soon, Emily began making small changes for Liam. She started bringing toys that made gentle sounds, noticing which ones calmed him. She showed Jonathan how to use rhythm to soothe him when he was upset. She even discovered a song and old lullaby that always made Liam stop crying. One evening, after a particularly emotional day at home, Jonathan arrived at the diner looking exhausted. Liam had been screaming for hours. Nothing had worked. But the moment they entered and saw Emily, Liam quieted. Just like that, as if he knew she was his safe place. Emily took one look at Jonathan and said, "Sit down. I've got him." Lifted Liam gently from his wheelchair and held him against her chest, rocking him like a baby. She hummed that special lullaby and whispered into his ear. Slowly, Liam melted into her arms, peaceful again. Jonathan sat across the booth, watching. Unable to speak, his eyes welled with tears. He had tried to comfort Liam in so many ways, but it never worked like this. Somehow, this young woman had unlocked a part of his son that no one else could. As they left that night, Jonathan hesitated at the door. He looked at Emily and said, "You know, I don't think you're just a waitress." Emily laughed. "Well, I am, but thank you." "No," Jonathan said. "You're a healer." She blushed, clearly not used to compliments. "I just do what feels right." Jonathan nodded, but inside he was thinking something much bigger. He didn't just want Emily. In Liam's life for an hour at a diner, he wanted her full time. He wanted her close. He didn't know how to ask, or if she'd say yes. But he was sure of one thing now: Molly had changed their world. Later that night, he looked at his reflection in the mirror and asked himself a hard question. Was he ready to let someone in? For years he had lived behind walls, afraid to trust, afraid to feel. But Emily had broken through without even trying. She didn't want anything from him. She didn't know he was rich. She didn't even know his last name. And yet, she had given him and Liam something no money could buy. Jonathan lay awake for hours, thinking. He thought about his lonely mansion, about Liam's cold therapy room, about the smiles that only Emily could pull from his son's lips. By morning, he had made a decision. It was bold, risky, emotional, but his heart told him it was right. He was going to offer Emily a new life, not out of charity, but because she had already earned it in ways she didn't even realize. She had given his son comfort, laughter, and light. It was his turn to give something back. Jonathan couldn't stop thinking about Emily. Every time she smiled at Liam, every time she whispered kind words or sang softly, something inside him shifted. She had done something no expert or machine had ever done. She had touched his son's heart. And now, Jonathan knew he couldn't just keep visiting the diner. He had to do more. He had to bring her into Liam's life completely. But the question was how. That morning, he sat in his quiet office, looking out of the large glass window. The city below was buzzing with life, but he felt strangely disconnected from it. His thoughts kept returning to Emily's warm voice, her gentle touch, and Liam's tiny, hard-won smiles. A deep part of him felt sure Emily was meant to be part of their story. But how could he ask her to leave everything behind? He didn't even know if she would say yes. Jonathan spent hours trying to write the perfect letter. Then he deleted it. He thought about calling her, but realized he didn't even have her number. Everything about Emily had happened so naturally, with no planning, no pressure. Now he had to make a move that could change her life and his forever. Later that afternoon, Jonathan and Liam went to the diner again. It was a bright day and sunlight streamed through the windows. Emily was already there, wearing her usual apron and a cheerful smile. When she saw Liam, her eyes lit up like they always did. "There's my favorite guy," she said, bending down and gently squeezing Liam's hand. "I missed you." Liam's face twitched, and a soft sound escaped. His mouth, Jonathan saw it, a real smile, even bigger than before. Emily looked up at Jonathan. "He's getting more expressive every week." "He's amazing." "No," Jonathan replied. "You're amazing." Emily looked at him, surprised by the seriousness. In his voice, He took a deep breath. "I need to talk to you after your shift," he said. "It's important." Emily blinked. "Is everything okay?" Jonathan nodded slowly. "Yes, it's just something I've been thinking about for a long time." After their meal, Jonathan waited in his car outside the diner, watching as the sky turned pink with sunset. Emily finally walked out, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She was surprised to see him still there. "I thought you left hours ago," she said. "I told you I'd wait," he said simply. They sat on a bench near the sidewalk. Cars passed. Slowly, and a soft breeze rustled the trees. Jonathan turned to her. "I want to tell you the truth," he began, "about who I really am." Emily tilted her head, confused. "My name is Jonathan Blake. I own a large tech company. Well, some would say I'm very rich." Emily stared at him. "Wait, you're that Jonathan Blake? The one who made the app that?" He nodded. "Yes, that's me." She sat back, clearly shocked. "But you come here like any regular person." "I had no idea. That's why I kept it quiet," he said. "I didn't want you to treat me differently. I wanted you to see me and Liam the way we are, not as some billionaire and his son." Emily was quiet for a while. Then she smiled softly. "I'm glad you told me, but I have to say, it doesn't really change how I see you." Jonathan looked at her, surprised. "You're just a dad trying to help his son," she said. "That's how I've always seen you." Her words hit him deeply. For years, people had treated him like a prize or a wallet. But Emily saw through all of that. He nodded. "Thank you. That means more than you know." He paused, then continued. "But that's not all. I have a request. Maybe even a favor. A big one." Emily's face became serious. "I want to hire you, not as a waitress, not as a helper, but as Liam's full-time caregiver, therapist, ... maybe even his teacher." Emily blinked in shock. "Me, but I'm not a trained therapist." "May not have a degree," Jonathan said, "but you have something more important. You have a gift. You reach him in ways no one else can. I've seen it. Liam needs you." "I need you." Emily didn't know what to say. Her heart was racing. She looked at her worn shoes, at the street, at the sky. This wasn't something she had ever imagined. She worked 2 jobs just to survive. Now this man was offering her a whole new life. "Don't know," she said slowly. "It's a big change. I have my mom, my brother. My whole life is here." Jonathan nodded. "I understand. That's why I don't want to pressure you. I just want you to think about it. I'll give you time, and I'll make sure your family is cared for if you say yes." Emily looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'll pay for your mother's medical care. I'll help your brother with his college. I'll pay you more than both your jobs combined. You won't have to worry about anything." Tears filled Emily's eyes. No one had ever offered her something like this. Not out of pity, but out of real belief in her. "I don't want you to say yes because of money," Jonathan added gently. "Say yes only if you believe, deep down, that you can help Liam grow even more." Emily nodded slowly. "I need time. You have it," Jonathan said. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts spinning. This offer could change everything. No more double shifts. No more watching her mother struggle. No more worrying about her brother's future. But she was scared. Scared of leaving the only life she knew. Scared of failing. Scared of getting too close and not being enough. She looked at a photo on her wall, her mother, smiling before her stroke. Her brother, holding a school award. And Emily herself, always the one holding everything together. She got up and sat by the window. The stars were bright that night. She thought of Liam, his small fingers, his soft smile. Peaceful he looked when she sang to him. And then she knew the answer. The next morning she called Jonathan. "I'm in," she said. He didn't say anything at first. Then his voice, quiet with emotion, replied, "Thank you." The next few days moved fast. Jonathan arranged everything, moved her family into a better apartment, paid off medical bills, set up Caleb's school funding. He brought Emily to his home, a beautiful estate on the edge of the city. Emily stood at the front gate, amazed. She had never seen anything like it. The house was surrounded by trees, flowers, and silence. Inside, everything was modern but warm, and in the center of it all was Liam. When he saw her, his face lit up. "There's my little guy," Emily said, rushing over and kneeling beside him. "I'm here now." Liam reached out and touched her hand. Jonathan watched them, his heart full. He had made many business deals in his life, but this one, this decision, felt like the most important one he had ever made. As Emily began her new life, she knew things wouldn't be easy. Liam still had challenges. There would be hard days. But now she had the time, the space, and the support to give him what he needed. And slowly, something else began to grow: trust, closeness, maybe even love between Emily and Jonathan. But for now, they focused on Liam, on the little boy who had brought them together, the quiet miracle that had already begun. Emily's life had completely changed. Just a few weeks ago, she was running between her two jobs, barely managing to keep her eyes open during long shifts. She was counting coins for groceries, rushing home to help her mother, and worrying about Caleb's future every night. But now, everything felt like a dream. She had moved into the guest house on Jonathan Blake's beautiful estate. It wasn't too big, but it was clean, quiet, and full of sunlight. There were fresh flowers near the windows, soft rugs under her feet, and peaceful silence all around. The first night she slept there, she cried not from sadness, but because, for the first time in years, she felt safe. She wasn't worried about bills, noise from neighbors, or waking up late for work. She finally had space to breathe, but the best part wasn't the comfort. It was Liam. Every morning, Emily would walk into the main house and find Liam waiting. He never spoke, never waved, but he always noticed her. His head would lift a little. His eyes would search for her. He would let out soft sounds when he saw her face. That was his way of saying, "You're here." They had built a routine. Emily made their time together fun and peaceful. She played soft music while feeding him breakfast. She read picture books aloud, even though Liam couldn't read or speak. Sometimes she would put his hand on the pages, letting him feel the texture. They painted with watercolors, made simple crafts, and explored the garden. And every day she tried to teach him small things: how to respond to sound, how to touch colors, how to show when he was happy or upset. Jonathan watched it all from a distance at first. He didn't want to interrupt their bond. It would work. From his office upstairs, checking emails, or attending video meetings. But more and more, he found himself standing quietly in the doorway, just watching Emily and Liam together. It amazed him. Liam used to be so quiet, closed off, tense, but now with Emily, he laughed. Real, joyful sounds came from his mouth when Emily tickled his feet or told silly stories. His eyes followed her across the room. His hands reached for her. One afternoon, Liam was playing with a soft toy ball. He was sitting on a special mat, and Emily was clapping slowly, helping him learn rhythm. Suddenly, Liam raised the ball toward her. Not just dropped it, but lifted it as if offering it to her. Emily froze. Her eyes widened. "Jonathan," she called, "did you see that?" He came rushing into the room. "Watch," she whispered. She gave the ball back to Liam. Slowly, he raised his small, shaky arms and gave it back to her. Jonathan stood still. He felt like time had frozen. His son had never shared before, not like this. Not with purpose. "He understands," Jonathan said softly. "He does," Emily replied. "He's trying." It wasn't a huge moment to the outside world. But to them, it was everything. That night, Jonathan invited Emily to join him for dinner. Not in a formal way, just the two of them at the kitchen table, eating takeout and laughing about how Liam had thrown mashed potatoes across the room earlier. "You know," Jonathan said, smiling, "I never thought my house would feel this warm." Emily looked around. "It's a beautiful place." But it needed a little noise. They both laughed. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened. Emily helped design a more comfortable space for Liam, adding soft colors, natural light, and new therapy tools. Jonathan brought in professionals to watch and learn from her. At first, they were doubtful. After all, she had no degrees or official training. But after spending time with her and watching Liam's progress, they were stunned. "She has something special," one therapist told Jonathan. Her instincts are better than most trained experts. Jonathan was proud but not surprised. He had seen it from the beginning. Emily also began taking online classes in child development and therapy. Jonathan had offered to pay for anything she needed. She didn't ask for much, just a laptop, some books, and time. He gave her all of it and more. She studied hard every night after Liam was asleep. Her goal was clear. She wanted to understand more, learn better methods, and help Liam even more than before. But deep down, it wasn't just about knowledge. It was about love. She loved that boy with her whole heart. As for Jonathan, he found himself smiling more, relaxing more, started joining their games. Sometimes he would sit on the floor with them, rolling the ball back and forth. He even learned some of the calming songs Emily used. And Emily noticed Jonathan was changing too. He wasn't as stiff. His eyes were softer. He laughed more easily one evening, while Emily was watering the garden. Jonathan came outside with 2 cups of tea. "I never liked tea until I met you," he said. Emily laughed. "Hey, that's because you were drinking the wrong kind." They sat on the porch, watching the sun go down, Jonathan said. "Sometimes I wonder how I managed all those years without you." Emily looked at him, surprised. He continued. "I thought I had everything: money, power, success. But I was missing peace. You brought that with you." Emily's face turned red. She wasn't used to compliments like that. "Liam brought us together," she said softly. "He's the reason for all of this." Jonathan nodded. "Yes, but you're the reason he's blooming." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Her heart was full. Not just because of the sweet words, but because she realized something. She was falling in love, slowly, deeply, quietly. Not just with Liam, but with Jonathan too. The man behind the serious face. The father who would do anything for his son. The man who saw her worth even when she didn't. But just when everything seemed perfect, something happened. It was a gray morning. Emily's phone buzzed with a call from Caleb. He was crying. Her mother had collapsed and was taken to the hospital. Emily's heart dropped. Without thinking, she grabbed her bag and ran to Jonathan. "I need to go. It's my mom," she said, shaking. Jonathan didn't ask questions. "Take the car. I'll have my driver go with you. I'll stay." "With Liam?" Emily nodded, tears running down her cheeks. She rushed out, her mind racing with fear. At the hospital, the news was terrible. Her mother had suffered a second stroke, this one worse than the first. She was unconscious, and the doctors weren't hopeful. Caleb was there, shocked and scared. Emily held him tightly, her heart breaking. For 2 days, she stayed by her mother's side, barely sleeping, barely eating. Jonathan called every few hours, asking how she was, offering help, sending meals to the hospital, but Emily barely responded. Her mind was full of fear, grief, and guilt. On the 3rd night, her mother passed away. Emily didn't cry right away. She sat beside the bed, holding her mother's cold hand. Her mind was quiet, almost numb. She thought about all the sacrifices her mother had made. All the nights she had stayed awake with her. All the times they had laughed, even during hard times. She whispered, "Thank you, Mom." He kissed her forehead. The funeral was quiet. Jonathan and Liam came. That meant everything to her. Seeing Liam in his wheelchair, dressed in a neat little suit, made her smile through her tears. He was part of her heart now. So was Jonathan. The whole town showed up. People who used to see her at the diner hugged her and told her stories about her mother. For the first time, Emily realized how many lives her family had touched, even in their small, quiet way. After the funeral, Emily walked Jonathan and Liam to their car. "I don't know what to do next," she whispered. Jonathan held her hand gently. "Come home." That word home hit her deeply. His house had become her safe place. Liam was like her child. And Jonathan ... He was more than just her boss. Emily nodded. A few days later, Jonathan called her into his study. "I want to do something," he said. "Something for your mother and for you." He told her his plan to build a small community center in her mother's name. A place where families with special needs children could come for support, therapy, and love. A safe place, just like the one Emily had created for Liam. Emily burst into tears. "You don't have to do that." She said, "I want to," Jonathan replied. "You gave my son the world. Let me give something back." Emily hugged him. It was the first time they hugged, like that, full of emotion, full of truth. And from that moment on, something new began between them. A closeness that wasn't just about Liam anymore. It was about them, about two hearts finding their way to each other. After the difficult days of loss and sorrow, life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm for Emily, Jonathan, and Liam. The community center was taking shape, and with every brick laid and every room painted, it felt like a promise was being made, a promise of hope, healing, and new beginnings. Emily stood by Jonathan's side as they walked through the nearly finished building, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. It was strange for Emily to think about all that had changed. A few months ago, she was just a waitress working too, jobs barely making ends meet. Now she was a part of something much bigger, helping families like hers and like Liam's, giving them the support and care they needed. And she was doing it with Jonathan, the billionaire father who had trusted her with his most precious treasure. Liam had grown so much. His smiles were more frequent, and his small hands were stronger and more coordinated. He was learning to express himself in new ways. Sometimes when Emily sang to him, he would hum back softly, a sound that filled her heart with joy. Jonathan, too, was changing. He was no longer just the serious businessman. He was a father learning how to cherish the small moments, to be present and gentle. One afternoon, as Emily was teaching Liam how to use a special communication device, Jonathan walked into the room quietly. Liam looked up, his face brightening at the sight of his father. Jonathan sat down next to them and watched carefully. Emily explained, "This device helps Liam tell us what he wants or how he feels. He presses pictures or words and we listen." Jonathan nodded, impressed. "You've taught him so much. You're incredible." Emily smiled but shook her head. "He teaches me too." Jonathan reached out and took her hand. Their eyes met, and for a moment, words weren't needed. There was an unspoken understanding between them, to people who had found comfort and love in each other, through a little boy who had changed their lives forever. As the days passed, the community center officially opened. It was a warm, welcoming place filled with laughter, learning, and hope. Families with children who had disabilities came from near and far. Therapists, volunteers, and teachers worked side by side with Emily and Jonathan. The center had play areas, therapy rooms, and a quiet garden where children could relax. Emily was the heart of the center. She greeted families with kindness, listened to their stories, and shared her own journey. Many parents told her how much they admired her strength and dedication. Jonathan handled the funding and big decisions, but he never forgot what Emily had taught him: the importance of compassion, patience, and love. He often reminded himself that true success wasn't measured in dollars or deals, but in the smiles of children like Liam. One evening, after a long day at the center, Jonathan and Emily sat on the porch of the estate, watching the stars appear, one by one. "Do you ever think about how different our lives were just a year ago?" Jonathan asked. Emily nodded. "I never imagined this. I thought my life was set, struggling, surviving, barely making it through the day. But now, I feel like I'm living." Jonathan smiled. "You've given me that gift too. You showed me what matters." They sat quietly for a while, the peaceful night wrapping around them. "I've been meaning to ask," Jonathan said softly. "Would you consider being my partner not just in caring for Liam, but in life?" Emily's heart skipped a beat. She'd felt the growing connection between them, but hearing the words made it real. "I'd like that," she whispered. Their relationship wasn't perfect. There were challenges, moments of doubt and fear. But together, they faced everything with honesty and strength. Liam thrived with both of them in his life. He had a family who loved him deeply, who believed in his potential. Emily and Jonathan learned from each other. She learned to trust in herself and her abilities, and he learned to open his heart. The community center continued to grow, touching more lives than either of them could have imagined. Emily's mother's name was honored there. It's a symbol of hope and courage for all families who walk through the doors years later. When people asked Emily and Jonathan how their story began, they would smile and say it started with a simple act of kindness, a waitress holding a disabled child in her arms, and from that moment, their lives changed forever.